The courthouse did not feel like justice. It felt like air conditioning and marble and slow footsteps designed to calm people while decisions ruined lives. Miles Carter stood across the street and watched the building like it was a machine pretending to be a monument. Sunlight hit the columns. Flags moved lazily. People walked in carrying folders as if paperwork was neutral. Agent Mallory Grant watched too, but her gaze was different. She didn't look at the courthouse like a place. She looked at it like a throat. Because Gideon Vale had said it out loud. Donors are leaves. The roots are under the courthouse. Now the team had a pledge folder with names, judges, prosecutors, a clerk supervisor, 37 signatures that turned a charity dinner into a pipeline. The problem was not proving corruption existed. The problem was proving where it lived, and proving it without feeding the machine another child. Graham Holt sat behind the wheel in an ordinary sedan, ordinary enough to disappear. He didn't speak much. He listened to the city through the steering wheel, reading patterns the way other people read weather. Grant's voice was calm. No sirens, no drama, no confrontations. Miles nodded, even though she couldn't see him. The rule was simple. If Vale wanted a spectacle, the team would give him silence. They were not walking into the courthouse as heroes. They were walking in as paperwork. Grant's burner phone buzzed once. A message from the protection detail. Sophia secure, Mara secure, no contact attempts overnight. Grant exhaled by a fraction, then tightened again. Because a machine didn't stop. It just changed rooms. Miles looked down at his tablet. The pledge folder data was already mapped into a network. Donors tied to non-profits, non-profits tied to vendors, vendors tied to courthouse modernization contracts, contracts tied to the clerk supervisor. One name sat in the center like a nail. Edwin Rell, clerk supervisor, not a judge, not a prosecutor, not a billionaire. The kind of man who could stall a filing, lose a motion, misroute evidence, schedule a hearing, delay a warrant without ever being on television. The kind of man who made corruption quiet. Grant spoke into the earpiece. Target is Rell, not Vale. Vale is gravity, but Rell is the valve. Graham replied, valve we can turn. Miles swallowed. If we can touch it without getting cut. Grant didn't soften. We don't touch. We observe. We document. Then we apply pressure where it can't be ignored. They moved. No rush. No urgency. Grant entered first, dressed like a compliance auditor with a clipboard and a neutral face. Miles entered 2 minutes later, dressed like an IT consultant with a rolling case and a boring badge. Graham stayed outside, line of sight on entrances, ready for the moment the building tried to breathe out. Inside, the courthouse smelled like paper and old coffee. The lobby was full of quiet tension. Families, lawyers, a man in cuffs, a woman holding a child's hand too tightly, a security guard moving with the slow confidence of someone who enjoyed rules. Grant walked toward the clerk's office with the smoothness of someone who had every right to be there. Miles followed at a distance. The clerk's office was a glass-walled aquarium of paperwork, stacks of files, screens, printers, people who never looked up until you said their name. Behind the counter, a clerk smiled politely. "Can I help you?" Grant's voice was gentle. "We're conducting a compliance review of sealed filings and chain of custody protocols." The clerk's smile tightened. "Sealed filings are restricted." Grant nodded. "We're aware. That's why we scheduled in advance." Grant slid a letter under the glass. It was not fake. It was real. A state-level oversight request that didn't name the case, didn't name the child, didn't mention Gideon Vale. It asked one dangerous question. How many sealed filings had been accessed outside standard procedure in the last 90 days? The clerk glanced at it and swallowed. "I'll get my supervisor." Grant's voice stayed calm. "Thank you." The clerk disappeared through a door marked "Staff Only." Miles watched the door like it was a lung, because if Vale had roots here, the building would react to pressure. 2 minutes later, Edwin Rell appeared. Late 50s, hair thinning, suit slightly too tight at the shoulders. He looked like a man who had learned to keep his hands clean by never touching anything directly. His smile was polite and empty. "Agent," he began, then stopped. He wasn't sure what Grant was. That uncertainty irritated him. Grant didn't correct him. She held out her badge for 1 second, enough to signal authority without inviting conversation. "Mr. Rell," Grant said, "thank you for meeting us." Rell's eyes flicked to Miles's rolling case. "And who is this?" Grant's voice stayed soft. "Technical support." Rell nodded once, pretending he didn't care. "Let's speak privately." He led them into a back office. The door closed, and suddenly the air felt heavier, like the courthouse had teeth. Rell sat behind his desk without asking them to sit. Grant stayed standing, because sitting in a room like this was surrender. Rell's voice was pleasant. "What exactly are you looking for?" Grant didn't say Gideon Vale. She didn't say Brightshield. She didn't say Sophia. She didn't say Mara. She said the word that made machines flinch. "Patterns," Grant replied. Rell smiled faintly. "Patterns," Grant nodded. "Unscheduled access to sealed filings. Irregular edits, missing timestamps, chain of custody anomalies." Rell leaned back slightly. "That's a serious allegation." Grant's voice stayed calm. "It's not an allegation. It's a request." Miles watched Rell's hands. Rell had a habit. Every time Grant said a term that implied auditing, his fingers touched the edge of a paperweight on his desk, like the weight anchored him. Grant placed her clipboard on the desk. Rell's eyes flicked toward it. "A reflex," Grant noticed. "Miles will run a standard log export," Grant said gently. "No files, no content, just access metadata." Rell's smile tightened. "Our system is sensitive." Miles kept his voice flat. "Read-only export. 5 minutes." Rell hesitated. Hesitation in a clerk supervisor was not fear of privacy. It was fear of discovery. Rell's smile returned. Too controlled. "Of course," he said. "We cooperate." Miles opened his rolling case and pulled out a laptop. No hacking, no dramatic typing. Just a standard administrative request screen that looked boring enough to be harmless. Miles's fingers moved. Rell watched too closely. Grant kept talking in a soft voice, the way you spoke when you wanted someone to forget you were watching them. "This is a routine check," Grant said, "but we're noticing a statewide trend. Third-party vendors, modernization contracts, outsourced security." Rell's jaw tightened by a millimeter. Grant continued. "Sentinel Ridge appears on multiple courthouse safety bids." Rell's eyes flicked once to a framed photo on his desk. A ribbon-cutting event. Rell shaking hands with a tall man, Thomas Vane. Grant didn't stare at the photo. She glanced at it like it meant nothing. Then she spoke calmly. "Do you know Thomas Vane?" Rell's smile stayed polite. "He's a contractor." Grant nodded. "Of course." Miles's laptop finished the export. A clean file appeared. Miles didn't open it. He saved it. Because opening it here would be a signal. Grant looked at Rell. "Thank you," she said. Rell's smile softened slightly. Relief. Grant stood as if the meeting was ending. Then she asked the question she had been saving. "Do you ever feel like sealed filings are used as leverage?" she asked, tone casual, almost curious, instead of protection. Rell's smile froze. Just for half a second, but half a second was enough. Rell's voice stayed pleasant. "Sealed filings protect minors?" Grant nodded. "They should." Grant picked up her clipboard. "We'll send a follow-up request," she said gently. "Have a good day." Rell's smile returned. "You too." They walked out, and the moment they stepped into the corridor, Grant's voice cut low into the earpiece. "He's compromised." Miles swallowed. "Because of the hesitation," Grant replied, Because of the photo. Graham's voice came through. You saw Vane. Grant answered, yes. Miles's heart pounded. If Vane had a ribbon-cutting photo on the clerk supervisor's desk, it meant the contractor wasn't just guarding doors. He was inside the paperwork. They moved through the hallway toward the elevator. Grant pressed the button. The doors opened. Inside stood a man with quiet eyes and a calm face. Damien Rourke, the handler, the escort, the upload man. Miles's blood turned cold. Rourke looked at them the way a camera looked at a room. Recording without permission, he smiled politely. Good morning, he said. Grant didn't flinch. Good morning, she replied. Rourke's gaze moved to Miles's rolling case. Then back to Grant. I didn't realize federal compliance was in the building today, he said softly. Grant smiled. You're very observant. Rourke nodded. It's my job. The elevator doors began to close. Grant did not enter. She stepped back. Rourke stayed inside, calm. The doors shut. And the moment they did, Grant's voice turned to steel. Abort the courthouse interior. Miles's throat tightened. He's here. Grant nodded. And he wasn't here by accident. Graham's voice tightened. He's checking if you touched the roots. Grant replied. We didn't touch. We smelled. Miles's phone buzzed. Unknown number. A message appeared. Nice clipboard. Miles felt cold push through his ribs. Grant didn't react. She expected it. They saw us, Miles whispered. Grant's answer was quiet. Yes. Graham's voice came through. Exfil route. Grant replied. Stairs. Not elevator. No predictable exit. They moved toward the stairwell. As they reached the door, a courthouse deputy stepped into their path. Friendly face, empty eyes. Ma'am, the deputy said, we need you to come with us. A brief verification. Grant smiled gently. Of course, she said, and she did not move, because verification was a wrapper. Wrappers were how machines touched you without leaving fingerprints. Grant's voice stayed calm. What's the reason? The deputy's smile tightened. Procedure, Grant nodded. Then you won't mind telling me whose procedure? The deputy blinked. He hadn't expected resistance. Miles's stomach tightened. Grant kept her tone neutral. Call your supervisor, she said. We'll wait in the open. The deputy hesitated. Then he spoke into his radio. Miles watched the deputy's hand. It trembled slightly. Not fear of Grant. Fear of someone higher. Graham's voice came through. Two men approaching from left corridor. Grant didn't turn her head. She didn't want to confirm their presence with her eyes. She spoke into the earpiece, low. Graham, keep them visible. Graham replied, copy. A supervisor arrived. A woman with a badge and a smile that looked practiced. Agent, she said, too friendly. We just need to confirm credentials for building access. Grant held out her badge again, controlled. The supervisor took one glance and handed it back. Thank you, she said. Grant smiled. Any time. Then Grant leaned in slightly and lowered her voice so only the supervisor could hear. If your deputy blocks my path again without cause, Grant said calmly, I'll request an immediate review of courthouse conduct logs. Full camera pull. Full comms pull. The supervisor's smile flickered. She understood what that meant. Paperwork turned against you. Grant stepped around the deputy without touching him. Miles followed. They entered the stairwell. The door shut behind them, and the courthouse air changed again. In the stairwell, Grant spoke quietly. They just tried to isolate us. Miles swallowed. They wanted to search the case. Grant nodded. For the export file, Graham's voice came through, controlled. Rourke exited the elevator on floor 3. He's moving toward records. Grant's eyes hardened. He's going to clean. Miles felt ice move through his veins. If he deletes logs, Grant cut him off. He can't delete what we already exported. Miles tightened his grip on the rolling case. Grant's voice was steady. but he can contaminate the route. Miles frowned. How? Grant's answer was clean. By forcing us to react, she said. By making us go loud. By making us look reckless on camera. Miles swallowed. That was Vale's trap. Make the team look like radicals. Make the child look coached. Make the agents look unstable. Grant reached the ground floor exit door and paused. She didn't push it immediately. She listened. Because doors were where machines waited. Graham's voice came through. Black SUV just pulled up front. No plates. Grant's jaw tightened. They want us on the steps. Miles felt his pulse spike. Media ambush, Grant whispered. Grant didn't move toward the front entrance. She moved toward the underground employee garage. Alternate exit, she said. They descended further. The air smelled like oil and old rain. Then Grant's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't unknown. It was the oversight contact from her real chain. A short message. Judicial audit request denied. Emergency injunction filed. Hearing set in 2 hours. Judge assigned, Hollis. Miles felt his stomach drop. One of the judges on the pledge folder. Grant's eyes went cold. They're moving to freeze us, Miles whispered. Grant nodded. Under the courthouse. Graham's voice came through. The SUV has 2 men. One is Vane's. Grant's jaw tightened. So Vale isn't just cleaning logs. He's controlling exits. Miles felt the structure of it. The courthouse was not a building. It was a net. Grant's voice remained calm. Then we don't fight the net inside the net, she said. We pull one string outside. Miles swallowed. Which string? Grant's eyes hardened. Rel, she said. Clerk supervisors fear one thing more than federal agents. Miles frowned. What? Grant's voice was a blade. Exposure to the people they serve, she said. Not the public, the judges. Miles understood. Rel wasn't loyal to Vale for money. He was loyal for survival. Grant spoke into the earpiece. Graham, get eyes on Rel's car. Graham replied, Copy. They reached the garage exit and stepped into the dim light. A grey sedan idled near the far column. Too still, too patient. Grant didn't move toward it. She turned and walked the opposite direction, forcing the watcher to choose. The sedan did not follow immediately. Then it did. Slowly, Miles felt cold certainty. Tail. Grant's voice stayed calm. They want to pressure us into a mistake. Miles whispered, We can lose them. Grant replied, We don't need to lose them. We need to show them we see them. Grant led them toward a busy street near a coffee shop, with cameras, people, light. The tail hesitated, then stayed back. Grant spoke quietly to Miles. Send the export file to the secure chain now, she said. Miles nodded. It's clean. Grant's voice stayed flat. Nothing is clean until it's duplicated. Miles transmitted the log export through an encrypted channel. Confirmation pinged. Received. Grant exhaled by a fraction. Then she said the next thing like it was a verdict. Now we build the trap. Miles swallowed. For Rel. Grant nodded. We don't accuse him, Grant said. We give him a choice. Graham's voice came through. Rel's car just left the courthouse lot. He's heading north. Grant's eyes hardened. Of course he is, she said. He's meeting someone. Miles's heart pounded. Grant continued, voice calm. Episode 10 isn't about Vale, she said. It's about the first route we can pull without collapsing the whole tree on Sophia. Miles understood. If they pulled too hard, the machine would lash out at the child again. They needed controlled pressure. Grant spoke into the earpiece. Graham, follow Rel. No tail compression. Keep distance. Graham replied, Copy. Miles stared at the courthouse behind them. Marble. Flags. Calm. And underneath it, a machine breathing through clerks and judges and contractors who smiled like citizens. Grant looked at Miles. You wanted to know what under the courthouse means, she said. Miles swallowed. Grant finished, voice steady. "It means paperwork that kills," she said. "And people paid to hold the pen." Miles's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A photo. A courthouse hallway camera still. Grant. Miles. The rolling case. A caption. "We see you." Miles felt ice crawl up his spine. Grant stared at the photo. Then she spoke in a voice that didn't shake. "Good," she said. "Now we know they're watching." Miles whispered, "That's bad." Grant shook her head slightly. "No," she said. "It means they're scared of what's in our case." Graham's voice came through, sharp. "Rel stopped. Parking lot. He's meeting a woman." Grant's eyes hardened. "Wycliffe," she said. Miles's stomach dropped. "Marin Wycliffe. Donor chair. Leaves meeting valve. Roots feeding leaves." Grant's voice became steel. "Then we have our confirmation," she said. "The donor isn't just paying, she's directing." Miles swallowed. Grant continued, calm and precise. "And now," she said, "we make the first route cut its own deal." Graham parked 2 blocks away from the meeting lot and watched through a thin pair of binoculars. The lot belonged to a quiet medical office complex, empty enough to feel safe. Safe was what machines sold. Edwin Rel's car rolled in first. He didn't pick a spot near the entrance. He chose a spot angled toward the exit, like a man who expected to run. 2 minutes later, a black luxury vehicle arrived. Marin Wycliffe stepped out with a thin portfolio in her hand and a donor smile on her face. She walked like the parking lot belonged to her. Miles listened as Graham narrated through the earpiece. Rel got out. Wycliffe did the talking. Rel nodded. Grant's voice stayed low. "No approach yet. We watch. We learn cadence." Rel opened his trunk and pulled out a banker's box. Wycliffe did not touch it. She pointed. Rel slid the box into her trunk like he was moving something dangerous without leaving fingerprints. Grant's voice hardened. "That's a transfer." Another vehicle entered the lot and circled once before stopping. Thomas Vane. He stayed inside for a moment, then stepped out. Tall, controlled. A man who made threat feel like professionalism. Grant's voice turned quiet and sharp. "Now we approach." Not Rel, Wycliffe. Grant walked toward them without rushing. Plain blazer, neutral face, the kind of authority that didn't ask permission. Wycliffe saw her, and her smile didn't change. That was the first sign. "Agent Grant," Wycliffe said warmly, as if they were at a gala. "I'm surprised to see you here." Grant smiled gently. "I'm surprised to see you outside the ballroom." Wycliffe's eyes flicked once toward Rel. Grant watched the flicker. Grant kept her tone soft. "You moved a box. I'm curious what's inside." Wycliffe laughed. "Legal documents. Boring ones." Grant nodded. "I love boring documents. They tell the truth when people don't." Vane stopped at a polite distance. "Miss Wycliffe." "Agent Grant." His eyes flicked to Rel. "Mr. Rel." Rel flinched at the sound of his name. Grant spoke calmly. "Your pledge folder lists judges, prosecutors, and clerk supervision. That's not philanthropy. That's process control." Wycliffe's smile sharpened. "You should be careful. Accusing people in public places is unwise." Grant nodded. "I didn't accuse, I described." Wycliffe tilted her head. "And what are you doing now?" Grant's answer was calm, making it visible. Miles's phone buzzed. Secure channel. Hearing moved up. 90 minutes. Judge assigned Hollis. Grant's eyes hardened. "They're accelerating." Wycliffe smiled, soft and certain. "Judge Hollis is very efficient." She said the name like she was saying the name of a friend. Grant turned to Rel. "Hollis, assigned to the injunction." Rel's face drained. His silence answered. Grant stepped back. "We're done here." They left the lot without rushing, because rushing was how you signaled fear. Back at the courthouse, the hallway outside courtroom 3B smelled like disinfectant and tension. People clustered in quiet knots, lawyers speaking low, deputies watching too closely. Judge Hollis entered and sat with a neutral face and eyes that moved too quickly to be neutral. Opposing counsel spoke first, framing the trap. Unauthorized access, witness contamination, federal overreach. Grant waited, then spoke in a calm voice that didn't argue the story. "This is not about content," Agent Grant said. "This is about chain of custody. We request a preservation order for access logs and sealed filing metadata only, no file content." Judge Hollis narrowed his eyes. "Why?" Grant kept her tone steady. "Because preservation protects the court as much as it protects minors. If everything is proper, it harms no one." Opposing counsel smiled faintly. "Fishing expedition," Grant replied. "A freeze is not fishing, it prevents edits." Judge Hollis glanced toward the back of the room. Miles saw it. A quick look toward Edwin Rell, standing near the door like a man hoping to be overlooked. Judge Hollis cleared his throat. "Denied," he said. Grant didn't flinch. "For the record, logs only, no content." "Denied," Hollis repeated, harder. Miles felt cold, certainty settle. They weren't blocking preservation by mistake. They were inviting cleaning. Grant nodded once. "Understood, Your Honor. Then we will file the denial with state oversight and request an independent forensic copy of the courthouse system." The room murmured. Hollis's jaw tightened. Counsel's smile vanished. Because the rapper was no longer quiet. Outside, Graham's voice came through. "Rell just left, same direction as Hollis's back exit." Grant's eyes went cold. "He's being summoned." They followed at distance. Rell didn't go home. He drove to an office building behind the courthouse with frosted windows and a private gate, a place built for quiet edits. Minutes later, 3 people arrived: a courthouse IT contractor, a prosecutor, and Damian Rourke. Grant watched Rourke's calm walk and felt the machine's confidence. "He thinks he cleaned," Miles whispered. Grant replied, "Good. Cleaning leaves fingerprints when we already have a snapshot." Grant moved alone, badge visible, calm. Inside the building, she found Rell in a hallway, face pale, hands too still. "Agent Grant," he said softly, "you can't be here." Grant nodded. "I can. You can't keep doing this." Rell swallowed. "I didn't do anything." Grant's voice stayed gentle. "You moved boxes. You watched a judge deny preservation. Then you met with a handler and an IT contractor." Rell's breath caught. Grant leaned closer, voice low. "I don't need a confession. I need a choice." Rell whispered, "They'll ruin me." Grant nodded. "They already are. They just haven't told you yet." Rell's eyes flicked with panic. "You don't understand." Grant's tone stayed calm. "I understand, Hart." He thought he was protected. He became luggage. Rell flinched. Grant continued, soft and sharp. "You are a valve. When a valve squeals, the machine replaces it." Rell's voice cracked. "What do you want?" Grant's answer was steel. "The key." Rell blinked. "Key." Grant nodded. "Who can alter access? Who can touch timestamps? Who can reroute notices? Who holds the backup path?" Rell's face drained. "I can't." Grant didn't argue. "You can. Or you can be the only name left when this becomes public." Rell's shoulders sagged. Then he whispered, like saying it might summon something. "There's an off-site backup, a private facility held through a contractor." Grant's eyes narrowed. "Which contractor?" Rell swallowed. "Sentinel Ridge." Grant felt the story lock tighter. Sentinel Ridge wasn't just security. It was storage. Grant's voice went low. "Name the location." Rell hesitated, then whispered, "Blue Lantern." Miles felt his stomach drop. Blue again. Markers. Rituals. Grant nodded once. "Good." Then she made it daylight. "You print the access roster and the maintenance window schedule," Grant said. You seal it. You hand it to me in public within 1 hour. No email, no transfers. Rel stared. They'll see. Grant's voice was quiet. That's the point. Visibility is protection. Rel's hands trembled. Then he nodded once. Grant stepped back. 1 hour. 1 hour later, the coffee shop near the courthouse was louder than it should have been. Not with music, with eyes. Grant chose the table closest to the window and the security camera, because cameras were the only witnesses that didn't get intimidated. Miles sat 2 tables away with his tablet down and his posture relaxed, the way an analyst looked when he wanted people to underestimate him. Graham waited outside in the sedan, watching reflections in storefront glass. Rel arrived 3 minutes late. On Rel, lateness was fear. He walked in, with shoulders tight, a manila envelope tucked under his arm like it burned. He didn't order coffee, he didn't look at the menu. He came straight to Grant and sat down without being asked. His hands shook. Grant didn't mention it. She spoke softly. "You did it." Rel swallowed. "I printed what you asked for." Rel slid the envelope across the table, slow, like it could explode if moved too fast. Grant didn't open it. Opening it here would turn paper into a spectacle. Instead, Grant covered it with her clipboard and stood up, as if the meeting was nothing. Then she leaned in, voice low. "You will be asked to deny this," Grant said. "If you deny, you become the fall guy. If you hold, you become protected. You choose. Once." Rel's eyes widened. Grant continued. "You will not go home." Rel froze. "What?" Grant's answer was quiet. "You're relocating now." Then the coffee shop door opened again. Thomas Vane walked in. No rush, no visible weapon, just posture. His eyes landed on Rel like a hand on a throat. Rel's face drained. Grant didn't flinch. Vane approached with a polite smile. "Agent Grant," he said warmly. "I was hoping we'd speak again." Grant returned the smile. "I was hoping you'd keep supervising in parking lots." Vane's eyes flicked to the clipboard covering the envelope. He knew. Vane's voice stayed friendly. "Mr. Rel, are you all right?" Rel didn't answer. Vane smiled slightly wider. "The courthouse can be stressful. People misunderstand procedures." Grant's voice stayed soft. "Procedures are fine. Manipulation isn't." Vane leaned in, a fraction. "Edwin, come with me." Grant didn't touch Rel. She spoke in a voice that did not shake. "Edwin," Grant said, "if you stand up and walk with him, you are choosing your ending." Rel's breathing changed. Vane's smile thinned. "Agent, you don't control people." Grant replied, "Neither do you. You just bought their time." Vane held Grant's gaze for one long second. Then he smiled again, professional and cold. "All right," he said. "Enjoy your coffee." He turned and walked out without rushing. Rel exhaled like he'd been underwater. Grant spoke one word. "Now." Miles moved first, positioning himself between Rel and the door like an accident. Graham pulled the sedan up to the curb as a delivery truck rolled by, blocking sightlines for 2 seconds. 2 seconds was enough. Rel slid into the back seat. Grant followed. The car moved before the truck finished passing. No chase, no sirens, just disappearance by ordinary traffic. Grant's voice was low. "That's what daylight does. It makes the machine late." Miles opened the envelope in the back seat. Inside were access rosters, maintenance windows, vendor ticket numbers. A short handwritten note at the top in Rel's shaky print. "Blue Lantern is where they mirror the logs. Rourke has the token." Miles felt his chest tighten. Grant saw his expression. "It's real." Miles nodded. "It's real." Graham's voice was calm. "Where to?" Grant answered with one word. "Dawn." Because now they had a place. And places could be entered. A server could be copied. A token could be seized. A story could be interrupted before it became a headline. Rel stared out the window, shaking, realizing he had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Grant kept her eyes forward and her voice steady. "If they move on Sophia, we move faster," she said. "If they move the logs, we mirror them first. If they try to vanish Blue Lantern, they have to do it in the dark." And dawn was coming.